Today's guest is Jeff Gallimore. He's the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer and also the co-founder at Excella. He's also a writer and speaker within the DevOps community, where he's also an organizer for DevOpsDays DC, and he's a co-founder of the DC Tech Community Champions. So thank you so much for joining me today, Jeff. It's been a while since we talked.
It has been. It's my pleasure. Thanks, Jeremy.
So for those who haven't met you, talk about your background. Where are you from, who you are, and what you do?
Yeah. Jeff Gallimore, Chief Technology and Innovation Officer and co-founder at Excella. You already hit that. So CTIO, go for short. And we already hit the official version of that title. The unofficial title is the T in the I stands for trouble and instigation. And my boss, my co-founder and our CEO would say I'm very good at my job, but always in the spirit of trying to be helpful and, make things better. So I'm obviously in the technology field, like we all are. When I think back about the field and like maybe where I got my start, I thought about my 7th grade math class, and our math teacher had a computer in the math room, and we did some playing around with stuff. And my first programming, we'll call it experience, was programming the turtle in BASIC to draw pictures on the screen. It had that computer, I think might have been an Atari, and it had that that cassette drive. That's how you stored your programs. Like floppy disk drives were not even a thing, at least in that world. They were the cassette drives. So that's sort of where I got exposed to the computer. And then my dad got one for the family the following year, so now I could mess around with stuff at home. And then we moved from Virginia to Colorado Springs because Dad was Air Force. He was career Air Force, and he got restationed out at Space Command out in Colorado Springs. So we moved out there, and that's where I went to high school on the Air Force Academy. And I had this, I was getting close to graduation, had this choice between staying in Colorado, a state that I really loved. There was just something about it that agreed with me. But Dad said, hey, we're going back to Virginia because I just got restationed at the Pentagon. So you might want to think about applying to some Virginia schools. And I said, well, I don't know about that, Dad, because I really like Colorado. I had my heart set there. So he said, but you probably should apply to a Virginia school. And I said, well, okay, fine, because you said so. And I looked and I thought, well, what's the state school of Virginia? I looked up University of Virginia and I applied to there. I had no idea that University of Virginia was the University of Virginia.
Right.
And I got in out of state, and which I guess was saying something at the time. I would tell my friends in high school. They would ask where I was going, and I was like, I'm not sure. I'm thinking about this Colorado school. And then I also got accepted to University of Virginia, and they looked at me like I was crazy or something. Like, Jeff, this isn't even a choice. And so I ended up going to UVA, the engineering school there, thinking I was going to be an electrical engineering major, because I had this notion that it would be super cool to be able to go down to the Radio Shack, which was also a thing at the time, and just be able to pick up all of the electrical components and like build stuff with them. I thought that would be fun. But I learned about a field, one of the majors that in the engineering department at UVA called systems engineering. And it was, the thing was really attractive about systems engineering was it wasn't uniquely suited to any like specific field. It was actually broadly applicable to almost any field. And it was really the science of problem solving, and in particular, complex, fuzzy, big, hard to solve problems. It was a problem solving approach and way of thinking. And that was really appealing to me because I was interested in a lot of stuff. So I ended up in the systems engineering field and graduating from UVA. And then probably the moment where I really discovered that I wanted to work in this field of technology as a career was the summer between my third and my fourth year at UVA. I had an internship at AMS, American Management Systems. Yeah. And the project that I was working on was a real property management system for the Department of Justice. It was actually one of the components, I think, within the Department of Justice. And it was to help them manage all of their real property, their buildings and property, land and such like that. And that was the first time I had seen a computer do something useful in the real world. I mean, it wasn't like programming the turtle to draw pictures, and it wasn't solving my homework assignments in college. So that was the first time I saw the computer doing something useful, and it was really interesting to me. The power of technology, the power of the computer to be able to do all of this stuff. And so I worked at AMS after college for a couple of years, and then joined a smaller consulting company. It was only, I think I was employee number 60 at the time, and did a lot of the same stuff there, building systems, working with technology, and then in the early 2000s, there was a group of us that got together and decided that maybe we were interested in starting our own consulting company, our technology services company, and that led to the starting of Excella with a couple of other co-founders, and then we're still rolling along here, 21 years later.
That's awesome.
Doing pretty well. And then there was one sort of inflection point. Well, there's lots of inflection points in that 21 years of Excella, but there was one in particular that was really meaningful to me, because I remember being faced with this choice of, do I stay hands-on technical, like slinging code, hands-on keyboard, or did I go into the best way I could describe it was like management. Management. I put that in air quotes. It was several years into Excella, and we were trying to build this company. And I remember trying to stay close to my roots of being a developer and a DBA, which is where I started my career in technology, and just having a really hard time trying to stay up with all of the advances in technology, like Java and the web and all of that stuff was all happening at that time. I'm like, I really love this stuff, and I think I'm kind of good at it, and it's really interesting to me, but I feel like if I try to keep my feet in both camps, I'm going to be just okay at both of them. Mm-hmm. And so it really came down to the choice of, where do I feel like I have the aptitude and the ability, and B, maybe even more importantly, is where can I have the most impact? And I felt like I could have more of an impact on people and organizations and teams by building my management and leadership chops, staying connected to the technology through others who were really connected to the technology, but really trying to explore that management and leadership track. And that was where I I don't want to say made a hard right, but started down that path.
It must have been really interesting too, as you were still in the middle of that decision. You're doing technical work, but you're a co-founder for the company working next to somebody who isn't, right?
That's right. Yeah.
It must have been a very interesting dynamic that I could imagine had maybe a little tension, maybe not. It depends on the people, right?
Yeah. So I don't know if I don't know if I knew enough at the time about running a company to understand that that the other person might be feeling that way. Right. I was like trying to keep up with them a lot of the time, and I still try to do that. Folks know so many things, and I'm just an extremely curious person. And if you give me the opportunity, I'll ask a billion questions, which sometimes frustrates people. And they grow wearisome of that. But yeah, I don't know if I knew enough at the time to understand the dynamic. I was just super curious and wanting to work with somebody, and they probably had thoughts and feels about all of that, but I didn't realize that until much later in my my career there.
Well, I mean, and I know this will be a positive comparison for you, but there are others, right, who have had that struggle, and you can use the Bill Gates of the world, the Elon Musks of the world, right, who are super smart. You're very smart in what you do, but yet have to be managers too. And there's that dichotomy they got to work out.
Yeah, that was also an aha moment for me. It was after that inflection point or that pivot of or decision point of stay technical or go down the management track. This is one of the regrets, that the notion that there's a science and a skill to management and leadership, that light bulb didn't go off for me until later than I would like. And that sent me on another journey of learning about, what does good leadership and what does good management look like. And in fact, that's probably where I spend as much of my time learning and trying to get better at that as I do about learning about the technology and understanding, what it works and how it works. Again, usually from others who are a lot closer to that. But that I could point to getting some leadership assessments and some feedback from that. I could point to reading the book "Turn the Ship Around" by David Marquet, and that was a big deal for me. There was a lot of light bulb moments for that leadership journey that I've been on for probably 10 or 15 years, at least knowingly on that journey for the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I know you're a big deal in the DevOps world. When did that kind of concept make itself noticeable to you?
I appreciate the throwing me the bone there, that I'm kind of a big deal in the DevOps community. It's certainly a passion of mine, for sure. And that there's probably a couple of key moments in that story too. So the first one was one of the people on my team at the time had just discovered this book called Continuous Delivery by Dave Farley and Jez Humble. And he was reading this and sort of along with that, he was messing around with some technologies like VirtualBox and Jenkins and things like that. And he was reading this book and he hands it to me one day and he says, "Jeff, you have to read this book." And I can't remember if he actually grabbed me by the shoulders and right in my eye, "Jeff, you got to read this book." But it certainly felt like that. And when he said that, Mike McGar, if you're listening, hey, yeah, I credit you. That got my attention. And so I read this and it opened my eyes to wow, this is not how we usually work when it comes to, building and delivering and maintaining systems. But it's so fascinating. And wow, if this is really how things could work, wouldn't this be awesome?
Yeah.
And then right at about the same time, I think I remember getting this mass email as we all do, and it had DevOps in the title or something like that prompted me to click on it, and it took me to this page, and there was this video there of Gene Kim on the stage doing this talk. Now, Gene was at the time he was the co-founder and I think CTO of Tripwire, if we're familiar with that product. So he founded that company. So he was talking about high-performing organizations and what contributes to high-performing organizations and this thing called DevOps. So this is probably 2012, 2013, something like that. And I said, wait a minute, I know that guy. So Gene and I went to high school together in Colorado Springs. We were in the same physics class our senior year, and the running joke is, who cheated off of whom. No cheating involved, but we did go to high school together, and so we reconnected. And he had started, I think he had started IT Revolution at that point. So IT Revolution is the company behind some of our favorite books and favorite events. So if you've read the Phoenix Project or Accelerate or the DevOps Handbook, or attended a DevOps Enterprise Summit, that's IT Revolution, and that's Gene. So we reconnected that and built a working relationship over a bunch of years, and I'm still helping him and Marguerite, who's the CEO, out doing all the things, and it's super fun.
That is super fun. And we can get excited about DevOps, right? Because we were there before DevOps and saw how badly things came together. And the whole, people just don't realize it's true when you talk about, I got the requirements, and by the time I built it, the requirements were so far different so I'm excited. I always like interacting with you when we talk DevOps, because it's such an exciting concept that I wish more organizations really adopted it truly, rather than some macerated, concept of it.
That's right. It's the thing that was so appealing to me and attractive at the time. If I'm being honest, it was a lot of the technology, and fiddling around with new technology, because that is always fun for me. But once I saw the ways, what we call ways of working now, and how different that looked, and then also connecting that to the outcomes that were associated with those ways of working, it was like, how could we not do this? This is an imperative. This is a way to do better and get better. And I could not, once I had seen it, I couldn't opt out at that point. I couldn't ignore that.
Yeah. So, as you've gone through your career and you've been a few places and you're doing a lot of stuff, what's something you've seen that if we came to you, Jeff, and said, Jeff, you have the power to make a change, right? Or maybe it's too big a change. Maybe it's something that is so big, and maybe you're going to just call our attention to it so we can start thinking through it, right? Because the solution's so large. What might that be for you?
Yeah. When people ask me that question, I usually put myself in the frame of, so I've got my magic wand. What am I going to do with my magic wand? And unfortunately, my magic wand is still in the shop, so I can't actually use it. But if I did have it, I would, big magic wand here. I would get rid of all the bad actors who are trying to break into our systems. That's what I would do. I would get rid of that. That creates a lot of stress and badness and all of that stuff. So if we can get rid of all of those bad actors and the security concerns that come with that, that would be pretty wonderful. But if we're going to take something that's maybe a little more approachable, maybe we can move the needle on this. I would, so for people who are in the IT field, or people who interact with people in the IT field, which I think might be everybody at this point, I think I would probably want everybody to have a healthier relationship with risk. And related to that, I think that people having an unhealthy relationship with risk leads to a lot of wasteful practices that might help us sleep better at night, but they don't actually do anything to improve outcomes. In fact, they might actually be counterproductive. And thinking about that, I can think of stuff in the use of cloud. We just talked about security. I can think of stuff in security that we do. Anybody out there have a change approval board that requires human review and sign off of documents? Let's talk about shifting that or getting rid of those. Manual testing. anything associated with a waterfall approach that has stage gates involving human review of documents. And so in addition to all of the, those wasteful practices, that culture of risk tolerance or intolerance, as the case may be, it creates this feeling in a lot of people that they're afraid to act, for fear of being wrong or punished or blamed or having some negative consequence sort of blow back on them. Or they feel like there are a bunch of blockers that are being put in their way when they do want to act. Mm-hmm. So whatever we can do to help individuals and organizations have a healthier attitude and approach to risk, I'd love to do that. And I think we're going to get better outcomes as a result of that.
Yeah, it might be closer to the bigger Wanda.
Yeah, well, getting rid of all bad security people,
I mean, that's true.
The black hat folks, that's pretty big.
But I work in government, so processes and bureaucracy are trade and business.
That is true. That is true. But as our mutual friend Mark Schwartz would say, you talk about bureaucracy like it's a bad thing.
Right.
It's not always a bad thing.
Not always. No, not always. That's great. So what's next for you in this, coming up maybe this year or even next, what's coming up in the future for you?
Yeah. So probably too much would be what my team would tell me, like, whip's too high. But I think the thing that continuing the thread of the conversation we've already been talking about, I think the ways of working that we typically associate with DevOps or DevSecOps, my belief, and I think you share this, is that those are becoming more and more mainstream. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of time, because this is normal. Which making that statement may not sound all that controversial or profound. Everybody goes, yeah, well, DevOps, that's just the new Agile or whatever it is. But let me put a finer point on that and make it just a little bit more controversial and profound. Going back to my unofficial title of Trouble and Instigation, what I think is going to become normal, and what I'm trying to sort of advance the cause on becoming normal, is doing things like creating the ability for teams and organizations to make a change to production in the same day that someone requested that change. So request comes in, we can make that change the same day. Like, I'd like to make that normal. Or being able to make multiple changes to a production system in a single day. Mm-hmm. Or making changes to production systems during the regular workday, the 9 to 5 or whatever that normal workday is for us. No more all weekend release windows where you open up the Zoom or the call bridge or whatever it is on 5 o'clock on a Friday, and you're wringing your hands and praying and hoping that it's everything's done by 8 a.m. on Monday when everything comes back up. How about recovering from an outage, an incident, or a service degradation in minutes, instead of maybe days or weeks, and without burning people out in the process?
Oh wow, yeah.
So those are the things that I see are coming. There's a quote that I love. The future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. And I think for those of us who have seen it, we've seen these, what these ways of working can do. And again, for the organizations and for the people involved. And, my passion, if it's not already evident and obvious, is to maybe create some space for that kind of change within organizations that would benefit from it. Because there are a lot of organizations out there that aren't winning in whatever way that they define winning. And there are a lot of people that don't have joy in their work in the way that they should and deserve. And with all the power that we have available to us through technology and these new ways of working, that my opinion, that shouldn't be the case. There should be a lot more organizations winning and a lot more people having joy in their work.
I like that. I look forward to that future, Jeff. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. It's been great catching up with you and hearing about your journey.
Indeed. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.